The man facing charges for the killing of Charlie Kirk faced a judge. Appearing in court from a video feed from jail yesterday, Tyler Robinson, accused of firing the bullet that killed Kirk at Utah Valley University last week. Robinson is now facing 7 charges, including aggravated murder and witness tampering. Utah County Attorney Jeffrey Gray saying prosecutors will seek the maximum penalty available.
I do not take this decision lightly, and it is a decision I have made independently as county attorney, based solely on the available evidence and circumstances and nature of the crime. Because we are seeking the death penalty, the defendant will continue to be held without bail in the Utah County Jail.
All right, joining us now is criminal defense attorney Imran Ansari. He's a former prosecutor with the Kings County District Attorney in Brooklyn. Imran, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. So is this as open and shut a case as it seems?
Yeah, so the Utah prosecutors have filed a notice already, Allison, that they're going to be seeking the death penalty in this case. And I think what we are seeing now is evidence that is coming out, gained through the investigations. We're seeing the text messages that are rather incriminating for Tyler Robinson. And of course, we have a long way to go between indictment and then a sentencing phase if he is ultimately convicted. But you can certainly expect that Utah is going to be seeking the death penalty through that conviction, if that conviction is had. And what do they have to do in order to get that? Well, they have to then now submit that to the jury at a sentencing phase, and you have to have a unanimous verdict, Allison, at the sentencing phase in order to impose the death penalty on Tyler Robinson.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that distinction, seeking the death penalty. Is there a higher burden when it comes to that? Because to your point, the evidence is all laid out between a note and text messages where Tyler Robinson literally says, I did this. So is there a higher burden to get the death penalty here?
So at the conviction stage, meaning the guilt phase, it's still beyond a reasonable doubt, right? You have to prove your case as a prosecutor beyond a reasonable doubt as to each element of the crime. And if the prosecutors are able to do that, then it moves on to the sentencing phase. And assuming Tyler Robinson is convicted of that top count murder, then he's facing that capital crime, that capital punishment. And then you're going to have, at that time, another verdict from the jury, if you will, and that would be death or life in imprisonment. And that's a preponderance of the evidence standard. So there's a different standard at the sentencing phase for the death penalty, but you have to have a unanimous verdict.
First, though, before you get to that point, you have to be able to seat a jury. How difficult is that going to be to find impartial jurors, given how much of this has already played out on national television?
You always have a difficult time as a defense attorney. Now I was talking as a prosecutor, that prosecutor role, I'm going to take the defense attorney role now. You always have a difficult time when you have a highly publicized case and you have a media coverage of the defendant leading up to trial. You have that consideration. Can we get a fair and impartial jury? Or is the jury so tainted by what they have seen in the media that they're not going to be able to render a fair and impartial verdict? That's what we're going to see here with Tyler Robinson. But as we are in the information age where it's accessible not only in Utah, this news, it's not a paper in Utah where you see this news or even a national paper that gets thrown away. Everything lives on the internet. There's so much accessibility as to other people's opinions on social media as to guilt or innocence. It's becoming increasingly difficult for attorneys to get that fair and impartial jury for a very public case like this. So his defense attorneys are going to be grappling with that as they pick that jury. There's sometimes motions to change venue, but this is such a national case with spotlight all over the country that you're going to have to really deal with a jury pool that likely has a knowledge of this case, knowledge of Tyler Robinson, of the allegations coming into that courtroom.
I've heard attorneys just say, during the voir dire process of deciding who's going to be on the jury, say, would you be able to decide on this case based solely on the facts and not your predispositions? And the jurors say, yes, I would. And it's just that, right, Imran? It's like the honor system, basically, to ask a juror if they can do this.
Certainly, that's the key question that we ask jurors. Can you be fair and impartial, and can you consider the facts and evidence brought into court and that alone, and sort of quiet and mute out all this extraneous collateral, commentary or news while you are a seated juror? It's very difficult, right? Jurors are people; people are not robots, and it's hard to even put aside some of the subconscious thoughts. And we deal with that as attorneys. And sometimes after the trial on appeal, after we get to speak to the jurors, after a verdict has been rendered, we find out there may have been some issues. And of course, that's going to be something that defense attorneys in a case like this would raise on appeal and after the verdict.
You're hearing many suggest that Tyler Robinson's best case scenario is some type of a plea deal, but why would prosecutors be at all interested in offering one? Would you assume that one would even be forthcoming here?
So if there's going to be a plea offer, you have to give to get, right? So what I mean by that is that if the prosecutors are going to give an offer, well, the defendant has to have some incentive also to take that offer. And if that offer is going to be put out there, it's likely going to be saying, all right, you know what, we will, if you plead guilty, we're going to not seek the death penalty. That is something in death penalty states that prosecutors often, dangle out there as a carrot for a defendant. I don't know if that's going to be the case here because there's a lot of sort of thinking into this. We're very in the early stages, of course, of this prosecution, but there's such strong sentiments about the allegations here that I don't know if the Utah prosecutors are going to dial back on that intent to seek the death penalty. And then, of course, we're going to have to see how Tyler Robinson approaches this as a defendant, and if he is, ideological in his beliefs, even in the courtroom, in the sense that he's going to fight the case into verdict.
All right, Imran, we appreciate it. And of course, we know first and foremost he needs an attorney. And we understand that there are several that have been under consideration, according to officials out there, but looking for one who has experience in death penalty cases, because obviously that's a major factor in this case.
Step into a massive, high-profile, seemingly unwinnable case. So how many attorneys are eager to sign up for this job? Should be interesting.